Hello, my friends. Just checking my phone. I occasionally get requests to revisit my Elemental Dignities video, which was way back at the beginning. And since I'm doing this kind of like revisiting old videos kind of thing, which I did with my ruminations recently, and actually I got a comment about elements recently, and so I thought, oh, there's something I could revisit as well, because as always, everything has changed, but things haven't changed. So, just to like give you an intro, elemental dignities kind of go back, I think, to the beginning of the Golden Dawn. Honestly, if I remember correctly, but the idea is that there are the four suits. Each suit has an element, so wands, fire; air, swords; cups, water; pentacles, earth. And that the elements are either dignified toward or against each other. And so, for example, fire and water are ill-dignified, meaning that they create conflict. Fire and air are dignified, meaning that they work well together. And that wands, fire and earth are kind of neutral towards each other. Whereas air and earth are ill-dignified, for example. That was something I used a whole lot. And there are different systems and there are different sort of complications and ways of doing that. Mine was very much that. It was like wands and cups are ill-dignified, wands and swords are complementary, wands and earth were neutral. And the reason that I did that and why it was such a useful tool for me at the time was that I would do very traditionally an elemental spread, and so it was 5 positions, one for each element plus spirit, and the combination of cards that would land was always interesting to me. So there was like, if you had a fire card in the fire position, that was really good. If you had a water card in a fire position, that was bad. And so it would sort of help me figure out light and shadow and conflicts and obstacles and that sort of thing in a reading. And I found it to be really useful. And I do have a video on how I did it, and it's one of my earliest ones, but you can see it, and I'll try to remember to find, gosh, I mean, that was a long time ago, but that was a pretty good encapsulation of how I did it. Over time, I changed, and I don't read that way anymore, partly because I generally don't use spreads with positions in them, and partly because I don't use one card for any one position when I do use spreads that have positions. I always use a minimum of 3 cards, inspired by Robert M. Place and his book, Tarot History, Symbolism, and Divination. That, definitely a formative book, taught me a whole lot about how I read now. And so I'm always using 3 cards. And so elemental dignities don't come up for me really anymore. I don't use them in that way because I'm not using positional spreads. But the elements do matter a great deal to me. And so what I do now is what I would call elemental interplay. And so that sounds a little kinkier than I think I meant it to, but what I mean by that is that the way that the elements work together in a reading does still matter. But rather than looking at the dignities and how, whether they're like for or against each other, is like most things, I start from neutral. And what I'm looking at in a spread of cards is our concentrations of things. So let's say that we draw, I'm just going to like randomly draw 9 cards from the tarot, and I'll insert a picture of this so that you can see it. But I'm just gonna so this is a spread I like to do a lot. You've seen me do it a lot if you watch my videos. It's a 9-card box. I don't have a lot of room in front of me to show it to you, but let's see. So we have the Chariot, the Empress, the World, the 10 of Pentacles, the 7 of Swands, the Queen of Cups, Page of Pentacles, King of Cups, and Justice. Wow, that's a lot of majors. But so let's work with that, because we can't, it's not a great example to talk about elements, but it's how we read, right? Or how I read. So right out of the gate, like I'm looking at combinations of things, and the first thing I see is that I have 1, 2, 3, 4 trump cards. So big Trump energy up in here. Ugh, big major energy. Trump. And in terms of elements, I've got 2 cups cards. I've got 2 pentacles cards. So not a lot of energy there. Not a lot of like earth and water. And then I have 1 wands cards and I have no swords cards. And so what I'm going to do as I'm sort of preparing to start talking and to do the reading is I'm going to think about the interplay of how things are working. So the first thing that's really obvious to me is because of all those major arcana cards, this is probably a really big important thing to this person. There's a lot of enthusiasm or push behind it, and it's an important thing. There's a lot of like spotlight, there's a lot of glitter and exclamation points on this reading because about half the cards are majors. The complete and total absence of swords is going to be interesting to me because there's no air in this reading. And so that could mean a few things. And again, this is like all about context, but, and I didn't give you a question to think about, but it's going to be central to the situation. The lack of air in the reading could very obviously be a lack of oxygen. And so that this is kind of a suffocating situation. It might also mean that it is not a time for intellectualism, so that air is not necessary. It's a thing you do not need in this reading. It is a much more active situation than the mind tends to let us be, right? So that's something that's really key that I would think about is like, is this a suffocating situation? Is it a good situation? Is it time for action rather than passivity and cerebral thinking and intellectualizing? There's only 1 fire card. And so what I'm going to do there is like think about their energy levels, their exhaustion. Are they enthusiastic about this? Are they burned out? Are they burning the candle at both ends? Like, where's the fire? There's not a lot of it. The number will matter too. So it's the 7 of fire, the 7 of wands. And so there's like a fair amount. But if we think about that image, it's very like, they're kind of exhausted. And then there's a nice balance between earth and water. So we have 2 pentacles cards, 2 cups cards. 1 of each of those is a court card. Right? No, 2 of the cups cards are court. 2 of the cups cards are courts. 1 of the pentacles is court. And so we have like the king and queen of cups. So I'm going to think about how they flow together. That probably represents a pair of something. And so without even doing the reading, I'm already starting to like ask myself a lot of questions just based on that elemental interplay and the way they're working together. So for me, it's not so much about whether the elements are dignified or ill-dignified to each other, but sort of how many there are and how they're working together. So let me take a photo of this so I don't forget to put in a real one later and I remember what cards they were. So let's just do that again, because it's fun. So I'll shuffle a little bit better. Ye old tarot cardies. Do you ever shuffle like this? Sometimes I feel like I missed my calling and I should have been a Muppet. Not a puppeteer, an actual Muppet. I feel like I would have been a cute Muppet. My favorite Muppet when I was a kid was Scooter. I liked his jacket. All right, let's do this again. So again, no question, just talking about elemental interplay, right? So we have the 5 of swords. The 7 of wands is back. King of cups is back. Clearly I did not shuffle well. King of swords. Empress. Chariot's back. Hilarious. 6 of cups, the world, and the queen of cups is back. So again, did not shuffle as well as I thought I did. I was too busy being a Muppet. All right, so what do we see elementally and combination-wise? We've got 3 major arcana cards. We have 2 swords cards. We have 3 cups cards. and no pentacles. So there's an absence of earth. So that's going to make me wonder if they're grounded enough, if their feet are on the ground, or if they're floating away. 2 swords, 3 cups, 1 wands. So we're in the same position with wands that we were in before. Like, is there enough energy? Is there enough fire? Or is this not a time for action, for example? Cups, there's a lot of cups, there's 3 trumps, 3 cups. So this has probably got to do with sensation, emotion. That's probably the dominant thing in the reading. And this is, by the way, a really good thing if you're doing a general reading. If there is an element or a suit that has dominance, that will give you a clue if you're doing a general reading into like what area of life they may want to focus on, or that the reading is reaching for. Lots of court cards. We have 3 court cards, so like there's a lot of people influence. I might also look for numbers, although nothing's jumping out at me. So let's do one more. Oh, I fucked it up. I think that this is what it was. Take a picture. Boink. I want to shuffle better this time. Obviously, I liked Kermit. I mean, everyone likes Kermit. I was not a Gonzo fan. I'm not apologizing for it. And also, while I'm talking about things that are popular that I don't like, I didn't like Tigger either. I know he wasn't a Muppet. He was in Winnie the Pooh, but not a Tigger fan. I thought he was annoying. I did like Rabbit, though, because I'm uptight. I want to get a good mix, you guys. Get a good demo. I'm probably going to get the exact same cards. All right, here we go. The Hierophant, the 10 of Swords, the 5 of Cups, the Empress is back, the King of Cups is back, the Moon, the 9 of Pentacles, the 10 of Cups, and the 9 of Swords. All right, let me take a picture of this so I do not forget. Boink. So, elementally, we have 1, 2 trumps, 3 trumps. Again, we've got 2 swords cards. We have 3 cups cards and 1 pentacles card. So again, we have no fire here. We have a complete total absence of fire. So again, do we need to light a fire, or has the fire been put out? That's a question that I'm going to want to know. Definitely 2 swords cards, 2 very dramatic swords cards. So anxiety, frustration, exhaustion may be play here. 1 pentacles card. Did I say that? 3 cups cards. And so there's like a pull, in a sense, between the swords and the cups. So like their mentality may be impacting their emotions. And so like there's not really a dominant force in this particular reading. It's the absence of fire that is curious to me. The suits themselves are sort of balanced. Once again, we have 3 trump cards, but this is a spread of 9, and so 3 trump cards plus 3 cups cards plus 2 swords cards. That's relatively balanced in that way. Like, trumps always tend to trump a little bit more, but it's a relatively balanced array, aside from the fact that there's no wands, and that the least is earth. So it's really underrepresented, and so again, there's maybe a lack of grounding. And with that 9, it may be a little isolating. And so what I'm not really sharing with you is like how I would read this spread, because there isn't a question. What I am sharing with you is kind of the dance of the elements and sort of how I work with them now versus the elemental dignities. So I'm going to do one more, and we're actually going to work with a fake question, and I'll just sort of show you in that regard how that might influence the interplay a little bit more. And so, I don't know, let's say we have a querent who wants to know whether they should take this teaching job for less money than they thought they should. You know, it's a job they want, but they can't really afford to live off this teaching salary. But it's a good intro to the job they want. All right. All right, what do we got? We got 8 of Wands, 2 of Pentacles, 5 of Cups again. Get there. 9 of Swords, 10 of Swords rather. Knight of Swords, World, 4 of Wands. Wait, 10 of. Let me just do this again so you'll be able to see it. So then 8 of Wands, 2 of Pentacles, 5 of Cups, 10 of Cups, 10 of Wands, Knight of Swords, the World, 4 of Wands, thank you, 6 of Wands, 2 of Wands. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Wands cards in this reading about career. So right out of the gate, that tells me they should probably do it. Although I'm going to look more at the other cards. 1 Cups card, 1 Swords card, there's 1 Pentacles card and 1 Trump. All right. So we have every suit represented, which is nice, but a huge abundance of fire. Yeah. Sorry, I was just sort of considering things. Like the temptation is to want to do the reading, but the point is not the reading. The point is how I work together. All right. So the other thing that I would notice is that the wands make up the first column and the bottom row. So there's this very like L-shaped protective kind of container that it makes. The only cups card is a disruptive cup. So that's interesting. The only swords card is the most active of the swords cards, and the only earth card is 2, so it's kind of balanced and but also kind of like attract and repel. So I mean, just sort of looking at the spread elementally, it probably feels like this is gonna sort of push them toward where they want to go. There's so much fire, it's gonna push them along. Now, when a reading has this much fire in it, a thing that I'm gonna wonder is, are they going to burn themselves out? Because there's not a lot of moderating influence here. So that's another thing that I might consider as well as I'm reading. Like, there's so much fire, more than half. They really have to sort of take care to not spend all their energy, all their like literal energy on this thing. You know what I mean? So if they're not getting a lot of money, they're really going to need to sustain themselves and sustain that fire somehow. And fire burns out without fuel and without oxygen. So, you want to take that into consideration. There's not a lot of oxygen in this reading. And there's not a lot of moderating water, So, that's how I sort of do the dance, I guess, with cards. And then I would think about the combinations of things too. What do fire and water do? They make steam. So that's something that's interesting. That can create a motor. If it's a very balanced reading, if it's a lot of cups and wands, and there's more cups than wands, is the water putting out the fire, or conversely, is the fire evaporating the water in a bad way? So like that's something that you might consider. Is whenever there's no pentacles in a reading, I'm always curious if they have any sort of realistic expectations. if there's no swords in a reading? Like, are they thinking? Are they being thoughtful enough? So like these are, and it's all different. It depends on how you read and what the context is, but that's kind of how I do this. And it is sort of a dance, but you're just kind of looking at the interplay and saying, how are these things connected? What is the absence of or abundance of a particular suit telling me? And, how can that contribute to the overall answer? So it's just another tool in your toolkit. And that's kind of how I work with the elements. It's just looking for patterns, and it's just another pattern that we can recognize. So that's how I've kind of evolved in that way, and happy to take your questions or thoughts on this. And I really have found this to be an incredibly effective way to do a reading and to work with the elements, rather than assuming that they're like butting up against each other or helping each other, to like everything else to neutralize it and see how they're dancing together. And that's kind of how I do everything these days. So yes, I hope that's helpful. I hope you're well and healthy and staying sane in the midst of all this craziness. And I'm going to try to keep making videos, and we're going to get through it. So be good. Talk soon. Bye.